And welcome back to the Cafe Sofa. So we've got a question that's come in from one of our audience, and I'm joined by Julie as always, and we also have the lovely Michelle. And this is a question we often get it in from clients, different amounts, different reasons. So the question that's been posed is, I've got £10,000 in my bank account. What do I do with it? So I'm going to go around the sofa and we're going to hopefully answer why you shouldn't necessarily be thinking what you are thinking and all of the other things that you could be considering instead. So basically, we will cover the what, where, when, and how of what to consider if you are asking yourself this question. And I think, I'm sure Julie and Michelle, you'd agree that this is a question that we do hear asked. And I think a lot of people are asking it today because we can see interest rates in the bank accounts are falling. I think the highest one I found yesterday was 0.75. And then we also are mindful that there is this cost of living that we keep hearing being talked about, and things feel like they're getting more expensive. So is our money actually losing money sat in the bank account? So I'm going to throw the question open to Julie first. What would you be saying to someone asking this question that maybe they should also be considering at this time?
All right. Okay. I think this is a really good question that we've had sent in to us. And it's kind of question that we've all heard so many times throughout our careers. And although this question is about, I've got £10,000, what should I do with that? It could be any amount. You know, one week it'll be someone asking 20,000, next week somebody asking 5,000 or 100,000. But the fundamental questions and the thought process remains the same, I think, regardless of what it is. And it normally happens when there's money come in that you weren't expecting or isn't typical for you. And the feeling that a lot of people express to me is they don't know what they're meant to do. This is different. I don't know what to do with this. I went off on a tangent there. What was the actual question, Catherine?
So if I had £10,000 in my bank account today and I was looking to do something, inverted commas, with it, from a coaching and advising perspective, what would we be saying to someone with that question to consider?
Okay, so let's start with the basic principles of making you financially healthy. And that's about having a stash fund. When life happens and things go a little bit wrong and it's going to be expensive. We'll use me as an example this week. I've had car problems, people. Okay. I woke up, went to work the other week, got into my car. There's a puddle in it. All right. And at one point it was looking hellishly expensive to fix. We're talking maybe, I don't know, maybe in £2,000 mark upwards. So it's, have you got money put aside for when you find a puddle in your car?
Puddles are not meant to be in cars, but yeah. And I think we've got different names for that. So some people call that an emergency fund. I call it a cushion because it just kind of feels softer and nicer. Although yesterday my daughter had a very similar thing. She spilled her coffee on her laptop, her car brakes seized up, and then she bent her engagement ring. So we called that a reality day because these things happen. So yeah, do you have the stash, stroke emergency fund, stroke cushion, stroke reality fund, stroke sinking funds, whatever you call them, as that first part of your, do you call it financial health, money health funds?
I just made that up a minute ago.
Of your health, your money health. Michelle, anything that you'd add to that before we dive a little bit deeper, assuming that you've got that reality fund tick boxed off?
Yeah, I think from sort of my side of it, yes, it is that having that, I always call it a rainy day fund. So it is that similar thing. But I think it's then actually thinking, what's your goals? What are you doing moving forward? And that will give you the starting point to go forward to the next bit. What are your plans?
It was literally raining inside my car, Michelle.
I know. I was thinking there is literally a rainy day in Julie's car. So that's definitely a rainy day fund. So goals. Tell us a bit more about that, Michelle.
You may, depending on where you are in life, you may be that you're saving for your first home, or you know that maybe in 5-10 years' time, you want to buy your first home and you want to save. So when you need that money is going to determine your options available to you. And I think the goals, and it could be something that you want to go on a holiday. There's something you've been really looking forward to doing in a year's time, because we obviously haven't had many holidays. So many of us just want to escape. Or whether there's something more concrete. So I think just sitting down, what are your plans for the next few years? What do you plan on doing? And could that money help you?
So I heard you say there when. So you're kind of telling us that when we need this £10,000, whatever it is going to start to shape what we do with it. I'm just going to slightly backtrack before as to where this kind of questions come from. Now, Julie, I like to pretend she's older than me, but she's tell us about why you think this particular question in terms of searching for cash rates, how that's come about, why it is that we ask that, and maybe why it's no longer relevant.
In olden times, when dinosaurs roamed the earth and Julie was a young financial advisor, no, I think this question pops into people's heads because this money's arrived unexpectedly or unusually, and it's sitting in the bank. And in times gone by, not quite as far back as the dinosaurs, but let's go back maybe 15 years. So even if it wasn't you that's done this, you've maybe observed your parents or other people doing this. What we would do is we would hunt around, see who had the best interest rate, and you keep it in the bank, because you used to be able to get 5 or 6% on your savings in the bank. That was possible. So you would walk up and down the high street hunting around to see who had the best interest rate. And I think this is at the root of what the question is about, because you used to be able to do that. Like, well, I don't need to take any risk. I can go to, the example I used when we were chatting beforehand was Bradford and Bingley, but other defunct building societies are also available. And you would get a little bit more interest. So you did something. It was that notion of doing something. And now it's sitting in the bank and you still have this idea that I need to do something. I don't know what it is though, because all the banks, all the building societies, the interest rates are what's the polite way of putting it? They're rubbish. They're rubbish. It makes no difference who you go to. It's a really low interest rate.
Yeah. And I think that shifts into what is it for? So if, as Julie's example shows, that actually you need to have cash for that rainy day, puddle in the car, reality day, then that's where it needs to be. It needs to be in cash, not to earn an interest rate, but to serve that purpose of being available in case of an emergency. So if that part is already ticked off, and this 10,000 in the example you're talking about is surplus to that cash, is surplus to that rainy day fund, what might be the next thing that someone starts to think about?
Okay, so what have we done? We've taken care of the rainy day fund.
Yeah, so I have my emergency fund. Maybe I've got 6 months worth of outgoings, for example. So this is extra.
Okay, so what I would be doing then, so you need to accept if your money's staying in cash, it's staying in cash because it has a job to do and it's not there to make any money for you. Okay, I'm really sorry, we're not living in those times anymore. So we've stashed away money for when you find a puddle in your car. I think the next thing I would suggest you do is start having a think through, try to imagine next year, the following year, and the following year, like any big expenditures that you might have planned. So it might be that you want to get the bathroom done, or you want to replace the car, or you've got a big holiday planned, or there's an anniversary or something. Start thinking about where big chunks of money might be needed, and then keep that in cash as well. So it could be that you've got your normal bank account, open up a separate account possibly for your rainy day fund, so you can't accidentally dip into it. And then maybe have another account for like your planned expenses. So you've got 3 different pots of money there. The one to play with every day, the one to play with when it's all gone a bit wrong, and the one that you're planning to play with.
So what I heard there was quite similar to what Michelle was saying, that if there is a goal, bathroom, holiday, etc., with a known time, so when, then that's going to start to shape where you put it. So keep it out of your day-to-day fund, keep it out of your rainy day fund, and have that as planned spend for the future, but still in cash. You see, now this is where I get a little bit prickly in that.
Oh,
I know. So you just described the scenario today, Julie, of the interest rates are a 0. So realistically, if I have £10,000 sat in a bank account, I'm not earning interest, invest, unless it's got a cash job that I'm going to be spending in the very short term for a specific reason, it's effectively losing money because the cost of living is increasing. Then when I go over to the other side and I put on my qualified financial advisor hat on, I'd be saying, if you're not using this cash for the next 5 years, then potentially look to invest. Now, to me, there's a big difference between like now and 5 years. So this is where I kind of brush up a little bit. I find that difficult because I know for investing, we need a long term, but for short-term cash, 5 years feels a long time. Now, I know that that's not the tick box for, so I'm going to just throw that one into both of you who are both coaches and advisors and also mums with money to save and to spend.
I think one alternative to cash could be premium bonds, because you put them in there, they go into a prize draw every month. There's no guaranteed return, but as we know in cash, there's no real return at the moment, but you may win prizes, and I think that's quite nice for some people if they still want to have certainty of having that money left in 2, 3, 4 years time, but they've got a little bit of a boost on the way from the prizes that they've won. And it just leaves it there. It's not exciting. It's not, sort of going to give you a huge boost, but it's somewhere for it to go that it will be safe because it is government backed. And you can take it out at any time. You don't have to leave it there for a period of time.
So, I mean, that's an option to do in that meantime. Is it the right amount of time? Is 5 years for cash? Does that feel right for you? I know that that's what we're meant to do, but I'm just curious.
I'm not sure where you're getting this 5 years in cash thing from.
So we've just gone down a whole different thing, haven't we?
So I tell you what's going through my head as you were saying that.
Please, go on.
Okay, so, right, folks, there's what the textbooks tell us to do, and then there's real life, okay?
That's kind of where my question's
All right,
going.
let's deal with real life and how I talk with my clients about it. And that is, so we've done step 1 and step 2. Step 1 was rainy day fund, puddle in your car fund. Step 2 was planned expenditure. And when I'm talking with my clients, we normally talk about this over a 3-year time period, because in my experience, people can envisage and imagine what they're going to do in the next 3 years. Year 4 and year 5, they haven't got a clue. And I'm included in that. So step 1, rainy day fund. Step 2, what can you imagine for the next 3 years? And then whatever money is left over, it's not a case of you need to keep 5 years in cash. It's just the money that's left over. Are you comfortable doing something with that, where we would recommend that you leave it for at least 5 years? Does that answer the question?
It does. And I think it was just a challenge on that time period that we can't just say, if you might need this, then you cannot invest it. So it really was about pinning down what the purpose of the money is and whether or not they can afford to lose it, or if they would need it and don't want to have lost it. So it really was just a challenge that it's not about set amounts of times in set places. It's about what do you need to do with your life and your goals and your plans. So absolutely, that was where I was going with that. So you've got the tick boxes, you've got the rainy day fund, you've got, in Julie's case, around about 3 years of what you may or may not want to do with it. What are the options for someone? Let's start for someone perhaps who does not want to invest.
Well, why don't they want to invest, Catherine?
Some people don't. So I had a lady the other day, she does not want to invest. She's getting a little bit nearer to retirement. She does have her pension invested. She's got the amount sat in her, she's got the rainy day funds, that's fine. They've had a health scare. For her, in her case, it's 20,000, is not something that she wants to take a risk that is beyond where she is in her particular set of circumstances.
Right. Well, I think really probably what we want to do here is come back to what is the point of the money? What is the money's job? And I know this kind of conversation that you have quite a lot, Michelle, isn't it?
Yes.
About talking people through this.
Yeah, because everything that you have will have a purpose later in life, and it's when that's going to be used. And I think it's, if someone is happy to not want to invest, and we do have, as Catherine said, we have clients who don't want to invest. They don't necessarily, they're not worried about the money growing. They just want the certainty to know it's there. And I think that's where we have to sort of step in, and we are limited to an extent with how we can help with that. But it is about guiding them and talking to them as to why. What is it that's stopping you? Is it because you need this money? Is it because you are incredibly uncomfortable because something may have happened in the past that is stopping you from doing it, but actually you like the idea of it? So it's about us working, and it's talking, isn't it? It's that open communication with them as to what is the little niggling thing that's saying, I don't want to do this.
And I think that's what you just said there, Michelle, is that it is all about the individuals. We are all different. And one thing that this particular client hadn't considered but ended up going down the route is actually she was more comfortable making bigger mortgage payments. So rather than it sitting in the bank account, and rather than investing, she could make the overpayments on her mortgage. That would clear sooner. It ticked her box for the health scare and that sense of not having such a long time period. So I would put that on the table as an option to consider for some people, if you really don't want to be, not that there's ever an option, you can do, and there's lots and lots of options, but paying down debt is also something you could do rather than leaving it in your bank account or investing for the longer term.
Definitely. I think also it's that interest rate implication, isn't it? If they're paying much higher rates of interest on those debts that they are paying compared to what you can earn, as we know, in a bank account, then actually you're going to be saving yourself that money over the longer term. And it gives people reassurance too. I think if the ability to pay down that debt quicker is a bit of a comfort blanket for people. They like that. Yeah.
And especially when you've had something that's made you realize, actually, maybe 3, 5, 10 years isn't for me. But it's that personal, what is the purpose? What do you want to do with it? What is your plan? What's important to you as an individual? There's not one set answer for everyone. Julie, what else would you go through with your clients in this conversation that's been presented to you?
I think then, as once we've covered off the other things, is like we were saying, it's understanding what the purpose of the money is. So you've given an example there, your client Catherine, where the purpose was to buy additional security and peace of mind by sort of paying down some of the mortgage. Now, if we take the other example that we're most commonly going to come across, and that is where there is some future goal that we want to fund. And then it's right, well, what's going to be the most efficient way to do that? Now, unfortunately, cash is not an efficient way to grow your money, because money sitting in the bank does not grow at all. Even if we get interest rates of 3, 4, 5% again, the actual capital value does not go up. So if we're looking to grow the money for some future purpose, probably the next stop to look at is using your ISA allowance.
Okay. So should we just recap on what that is for anyone who's listening?
We can do.
As we are in March and we are coming to that super end of the tax year.
All right.
Michelle, let's just pull out technical Michelle. Come on, my love. Quick recap on what an ISA is and what the allowances are and what the options.
So your ISA is your individual savings account, and it is a tax efficient account whereby you pay no tax on the sort of growth and investments that are inside it, and everything you take from it can be taken tax free. But because of that, we are limited to how much we are allowed to put in them each year. And it's currently 20,000. I think there's no plans to change that at all. And it's been sat there for quite a while. So 20,000 a year can go into this ISA sort of account, and it just allows it to grow tax-free. So the more you can do that, if you have the spare funds, it just allows you to enjoy a little bit more and pay a bit less to the HMRC.
I've got a question I need to ask. Right. If a pension is the toffee one, right? Back to the quality street, folks. What kind of quality street is an ISA?
I actually did this with a client the other day, which was quite strange, and it was a strawberry cream.
Okay. If this is making no sense, you need to go back and listen to Pensions 101, which is episode
14.
Excellent.
I mean, the ISA is a natural next place because of that tax efficiency, and because of its immediate availability. You can have that in cash and you can have that invested. If your goal is saving for a house, so if this £10,000 is something for a house, then you could also consider the lifetime ISA. So it uses some of your £20,000 allowance, so £4,000 of it. You put the money in there, either in cash or invested, and the government gives you more free money. So for the £4,000, you get an additional £1,000. So if your purpose, which both Michelle and Julie have said you need to be thinking about, is in and around buying a house, then as part of your ISA, consider the lifetime allowance. A couple of drawbacks is you will have to pay that penalty if you take it out for any other reason. So just be really clear on, can I put this aside 100% comfortably that I don't need to take it out until that house purchase?
And also on that £4,000, it is nice to know you can still put the extra 16 that you haven't used into an ISA.
Yeah.
Can I give an opinion on something? Can I share an opinion?
Go for it.
Then.
All right. So people, this is not personal financial advice. This is just my opinion and I may be wrong. Okay. But I think one of the purposes of us doing this episode was, if you're that person that's sitting there with money and you're like, am I doing this right? What am I meant to do with it? So hopefully now, you don't need to walk up and down the high street trying to figure out who's got the best interest rate, because I've just saved you a load of time by telling you none of them have. All right. My opinion is on cash ISAs. Okay. My opinion is today, which is the 5th of March, all right, is that cash ISAs are rubbish. Because I think a lot of people think, okay, so there's no point hunting around for interest rates, but what about cash ISAs? Cash ISA rates are rubbish as well. They're sometimes worse than the bank. So generally, I think go to the stocks and shares ISA first of all. Now, at some point in the future, if cash ISA rates do come back up, you can still transfer then in the future some of your stocks and shares ISA back into cash. You never used to be able to do that, but you can now. So that's my opinion. Who wants to disagree with me? Catherine's looking twitchy about what I just said.
I don't disagree. I think cash rates in ISAs are as poor as the cash rates in the bank accounts. I think it comes back to what's the purpose and why you're doing it. So if you are saving into an ISA and it needs to grow for you, then it's the fact that you want it to grow that's going to take you into the stocks and shares rather than the cash, because it's not going to do that in cash. But going back to, for example, the lifetime ISA, if you know your house purchases next year and you cannot afford to lose any of the savings, then it's serving the purpose for security. So it's kind of about what you're trying to achieve with it. So I don't have cash ISAs for my savings because I'm not saving beyond my emergency fund in cash. But there are instances where it might work for somebody if that purpose is quite short term.
I have also had it with clients who I'm working with who are nervous of investing. They have this money sat there and they want to do the stocks and shares ISA, and we're talking about it. And I've got some clients I've worked with over a year, and we get to that point as to what is stopping you, why. But we have put money into a cash ISA because we know in the future when they do invest, we can move it in the ISA from the cash to the stocks and shares. So it's just allowing us to get a little bit more into that stocks and shares ISA to begin with than losing that year's allowance, because once we go past the 5th of April, you can't go back and do any previous years. So I've used it for them when they've just been a bit nervous. And in some cases, I've got a client who's been sat there with 40,000 in a cash ISA and she's finally gone, I'm putting it in.
And
so we've
no
got that to go over. Yeah, no.
I like that idea because you extend that allowance of the 20,000 and then they can just monthly pay into investments if they want to. They don't have to put the whole lot in one go, do they?
No.
Okay, so rainy day fund sorted. Considered is an overpayment on the mortgage for you. Is it? What's the purpose? What's the goal? ISA allowance used. What other options are there, ladies?
Go on, Michelle.
Oh, and I was going to say the other thing is, if you don't need that money in the shorter term, and depending on your age, you can put it into your pension. and you get
Yeah.
the tax relief.
See former episode.
And I think that's a good one, but it does come with that huge caveat that you are not going to be able to touch it until you reach your pension age, which it'd be 55 or 57, depending on your age. And I think that has to come with that huge caveat. Yes, it's very good for you tax-wise. You aren't going to be able to get to it. So please don't commit funds that you can't get to if you really, really need them.
And we're almost looking like there's one answer here, isn't there? And just because you have said £10,000 or whatever your number is, doesn't mean you have to find one solution. That could easily be split toward a number of different goals. So I would maybe approach it like that it's not one single goal because it's £10,000. What are the things I could achieve with that, and spread that out? Any other thoughts, Julie?
No, I just like what you've just said. So if you're the person that's sitting there with X pounds in your bank and you're trying to figure out what do I do with it, is go and grab a pen and paper, and then just pot 1, the rainy day fund, pot 2, the short-term sort of planned expenses, and then just a litter of other things that you might want to achieve, what's important to you. So it could be that you end up that your 10,000, so you've got 3,000 that's gone away for emergencies. You got 4,000 that's gone for planned expenses. So we've got 4 left, haven't we? As you were like, right, well, I'm going to pay £1,000 off my mortgage. I'm going to put £1,000 in my pension, and I'm going to put £1,000 in ISA, and I'm going to blow £1,000 and enjoy it.
Exactly. And it doesn't all have to be done in one go, does it? The £1,000 loan can be 10 goes of 100, or the mortgage overpayment can just be a few pound a month. I just wondered how we've got to that. I mean, you said right at the beginning, Julie, that sometimes we get this money by surprise. Perhaps somebody has left us something, perhaps there's been a loss or a win. But some people have also just saved this, and that makes them feel safe. So if someone was feeling a little bit like this makes me feel safe, what kind of conversations or questions would you be asking them to maybe think differently?
Well, I think it's about playing with those comfort levels then and stretching them. So, if whatever your safety number is, it's asking yourself, okay, if I change that to a lower amount, how does that feel? And what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What would be different if it was lower? And I think the reason I'm saying that is because the bulk of us will not have financial independence if we keep everything in cash. You need to have a lot of money to be able to be financially independent and have it all in cash. So we do have to invest it to build up those assets. And so it's anything that's inhibiting your ability to be able to do that and build true wealth and freedom for yourself. These are the ones that the conversations we want to probe around and just try and understand a bit more.
I think it just reminded me of a question that popped up on LinkedIn yesterday, where someone had asked a similar thing. Money's in the bank, not doing very well. What do I do with it? Which is not the place for financial advice, because the answer that she was given was, oh, it's the wrong time because of insert what's happening over in Russia and Ukraine. So, but those are the types of things we hear back, aren't they? So when we go to the pub or out with our friends, it's not the right time or markets are falling. Just in a couple of sentences, address what you would say to the person who replied with that, or the person who heard that reply.
You go first, Michelle, because you're much more polite than me.
I give Julie a moment to cool.
I think for that sort of reply, it's not about timing when we invest. We can't time when we invest. It's about the length of time you're invested for. And I think that's got to be the key. And I think you could say that about any time in the market. You could find a reason why you shouldn't invest or why you should invest. Because conversely, we've got the same at the moment with people saying this is a good time to invest. And I think it's just dipping your toe in, seeing how you feel, but you can do it gradually. Do small amounts if you're not comfortable. But I think that those kind of comments are so unhelpful, because it is about how long you invest for. And as we've talked about in the podcast many times, it's that magic of compound interest.
Have you had a moment to breathe, so I don't have to tick the explicit box, Jules?
We're okay, because I do actually have a really measured response to this, because I say this just about all of my client reviews when we're just looking at performance. And the only time we make a decision about how and when to invest, the only thing that affects that is what I call internal factors and not external factors. So what determines if it's a good time to invest is what's going on in your life. It has zero to do with the markets. The markets have no influence on when is a good time to invest or not. It's all about you. The market's going to do what the market's going to do.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the simplicity of wrapping, because that's exactly what it is. It's nothing to do with the outside world. It's that person, where they are and what they're trying to do. It's very, and what you said, you didn't even allude to, you said earlier that to build wealth, we will have to move from cash into investments, as long as we're doing it once we're ready to do it. So not £10,000 into Bitcoin without an emergency fund, for example, but taking that measured approach that Julie and Michelle have talked us through. I was going to add something onto that. Oh yes, just that if you are on the cusp of wanting to invest, thinking actually I'm starting to recognize that maybe having this in cash isn't right for me, just check back to I think it's one of our favorite episodes, Julie, Demystifying Investments, episode 11, and you'll get loads of information. Or reach out to Julie, to Michelle, to myself in the Facebook cafe, and we will be there giving you a different outcome to, oh, now is not the right time, or do 100% into that. You are not going to get that sort of pub style advice from us.
They are welcome to take us down the pub.
Oh yeah. Yes,
we are open to that.
I can get through some cash in the pub.
There goes the £10,000 on Catherine's gin bill.
Yeah, or is this where I confess what I actually do drink? No, we'll leave that one for another episode. Okay, so anything else to add? So really, if you have 10,000 in the bank, the idea is not to chase the cash rates, because as Julie articulately put earlier, they're all rubbish. So as both Michelle, Julie and I have told you, suggested to you, it's about what you want to do with this, when you want to do with it, and there's not necessarily one answer. Once you've got emergency and then those planned funds, you could consider your ISA, the lifetime ISA, the pension. Anything else in that, or paying off the mortgage? Anything else in the equation, ladies, that would be useful for us to share today?
No, I think you've covered all the bases there.
Yeah, I think we have. I think it's just going back over those thoughts, isn't it? And
Perfect. Well, we will leave you with that. Thank you for joining us once more, and we'll see you on the sofa next week.